The Politics of Obedience. The Discourse of Voluntary Servitude. Part 1. The fundamental political question is, why do people obey a government? The answer is that they tend to enslave themselves, to let themselves be governed by tyrants. Freedom from servitude comes not from violent actions, but from the refusal to serve. Tyrants fall when the people withdraw their support. I see no good in having several lords. Let one alone be master. Let one alone be king. These words Homer puts in the mouth of Ulysses as he addresses the people. If he had said nothing further than "I see no good in having several lords," it would have been well spoken. For the sake of logic, he should have maintained that the rule of several could not be good, since the power of one man alone, as soon as he acquires the title of master, becomes abusive and unreasonable. Instead, he declared what seems preposterous: let one alone be master, let one alone be king. We must not be critical of Ulysses, who at the moment was perhaps obliged to speak these words in order to quell a mutiny in the army. For this reason, in my opinion, choosing language to meet the emergency rather than truth. Yet in the light of reason, it is a great misfortune to be at the beck and call of one master, for it is impossible to be sure that he is going to be kind, since it is always in his power to be cruel whenever he pleases. As for having several masters, according to the number one has, it amounts to being that many times unfortunate. Although I do not wish at this time to discuss this much debated question, namely, whether other types of government are preferable to monarchy. Still, I should like to know, before casting doubt on the place that monarchy should occupy among commonwealths, whether or not it belongs to such a group, since it is hard to believe that there is anything of commonwealth in a country where everything belongs to one master. This question, however, can remain for another time, and would really require a separate treatment involving by its very nature all sorts of political discussion. For the present, I would like merely to understand how it happens that so many men, so many villages, so many cities, so many nations sometimes suffer under a single tyrant who has no other power than the power they give him, who is able to harm them only to the extent to which they have the willingness to bear with him, who could do them absolutely no injury unless they preferred to put up with him rather than contradict him. Surely a striking situation, yet it is so common that one must grieve the more and wonder the less at the spectacle of 1,000,000 men serving in wretchedness, their necks under the yoke, not constrained by a greater multitude than they, but simply, it would seem, delighted and charmed by the name of one man alone, whose power they need not fear. For he is evidently the one person whose qualities they cannot admire because of his inhumanity and brutality towards them. A weakness characteristic of humankind is that we often have to obey force. We have to make concessions. We ourselves cannot always be the stronger. Therefore, when a nation is constrained by the misfortune of war to serve a single clique, as happened when the city of Athens served the 30 tyrants, one should not be amazed that the nation obeys, but simply be grieved by the situation, or rather, instead of being amazed or saddened, consider patiently the evil and look forward hopefully toward a happier future. Our nature is such that the common duties of human relationship occupy a great part of the course of our life. It is reasonable to love virtue, to esteem good deeds, to be grateful for good from whatever source we may receive it, and often to give up some of our comfort in order to increase the honor and advantage of some man whom we love and who deserves it. Therefore, if the inhabitants of a country have found some great personage, who has shown rare foresight in protecting them in an emergency, rare boldness in defending them, rare solitude in governing them, and if, from that point on, they contract the habit of obeying him and depending on him to such an extent that they grant him certain prerogatives, I fear that such a procedure is not prudent, inasmuch as they remove him from a position in which he was doing good, and advance him to a dignity in which he may do evil. Certainly, while he continues to manifest good, one need fear no harm from a man who seems to be generally well disposed. But, O good Lord, what strange phenomenon is this? What name shall we give it? What is the nature of this misfortune? What vice is it, or rather, what degradation? To see an endless multitude of people not merely obeying, but driven to servility, not ruled, but tyrannized over. These wretches have no wealth, no kin, no wife, no children, not even life itself, that they can call their own. They suffer plundering, wantonness, cruelty, not from an army, not from a barbarian horde, on account of whom they must shed their blood and sacrifice their lives, but from a single man, not from a Hercules, nor from a Samson, but from a single little man. Too frequently this same little man is most cowardly and effeminate in the nation, a stranger to the powder of battle and hesitant on the sounds of the tournament, not only with energy to direct men by force, but with hardly enough virility to bed with a common woman. Shall we call subjection to such a leader cowardice? Shall we say that those who serve him are cowardly and faint-hearted? If 2, if 3, if 4 do not defend themselves from the one, we might call that circumstance surprising, but nevertheless conceivable. In such a case one might be justified in suspecting a lack of courage. But if 100, if 1,000 endure the caprice of a single man, should we not rather say that they lack not the courage, but the desire to rise against him, and that such an attitude indicates indifference rather than cowardice? When not 100, not 1,000 men, but 100 provinces, 1,000 cities, 1,000,000 men refuse to assail a single man from whom the kindest treatment received is the infliction of serfdom and slavery. What shall we call that? Is it cowardice? Of course, there is in every vice inevitably some limit beyond which one cannot go. 2, possibly 10, may fear 1. But when 1,000, 1,000,000 men, 1,000 cities fail to protect themselves against the domination of one man, this cannot be called cowardly, for cowardice does not sink to such a depth, any more than valor can be termed the effort for one individual to scale a fortress, to attack an army, or to conquer a kingdom. What monstrous vice then is this which does not even deserve to be called cowardice? A vice for which no term can be found vile enough, which nature herself disavows, and our tongues refuse to name. Place on one side 50,000 armed men, and on the other the same number. Let them join in battle, one side fighting to retain its liberty, the other to take it away. To which would you, at a guess, promise victory? Which men do you think would march more gallantly to combat? Those who anticipate as a reward for their suffering and the maintenance of their freedom, or those who cannot expect any other prize for the blows exchanged than the enslavement of others? One side will have before its eyes the blessings of the past and the hope of similar joy in the future. Their thoughts will dwell less on the comparatively brief pain of battle than on what they may have to endure forever. They, their children, and all their posterity. The other side has nothing to inspire it with courage, except the weak urge of greed, which fades before danger, and which can never be so keen, it seems to me, that it will not be dismayed by the least drop of blood from wounds. Consider the justly famous battles of Miltiades, Leonidas, Themistocles, still fresh today in recorded history, and in the minds of men as if they had occurred but yesterday. Battles fought in Greece for the welfare of the Greeks, as an example to the world. What power do you think gave to such a mere handful of men not the strength, but the courage to withstand the attack of a fleet so vast that even the seas were burdened, and to defeat the armies of so many nations, armies so immense that their officers alone outnumbered the entire Greek force? What was it but the fact that in those glorious days the struggle represented not so much a fight of Greeks against Persians as a victory of liberty over domination, of freedom over greed?